You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A radiant creator isn't making a living, they are living.
Dedicating one's life, one's very existence, to a subject of study is how many have brought momentous breakthroughs and discoveries into the world. However, what about those individuals who bring important observations and facts to light that most consider controversial, or worse, laughed off and ignored as conspiracy? When one goes public with inconvenient and irrefutable facts that upset the false narratives of current worldviews, the so-called powers that be will often go to great lengths to counter the research being presented by denying, covering up, or threatening the individual or organization who dares to bring new discoveries into the public arena. This brings us to Matthew Landman, a devoted and passionate activist who is unafraid of the tremendous controversy caused by his research into the truth about chemtrails. We met Matthew at the Truth Mind Reality Conference in Phoenix, Arizona recently. He gave the most informative, dire, and comprehensive presentation on chemtrails that exists. Matthew is the creator of Frankenskies, a documentary film exposing the dark reality of chemtrails. He'll be a featured speaker at the 3rd Annual Global Summit to Stop Geoengineering in Tucson, Arizona on May 12, 2018.
Hey, how's it going, Craig?
A dark helicopter is just flying over the house. You couldn't time it better. It's really odd. We're getting a lot of military helicopters flying around recently.
Yeah, I know. I hear that. I was thinking the same thing about Sedona. It's like I don't see any reason why they should be flying so low. I was thinking maybe they're scanning the houses for weapons or something. I have no idea. So we met in Phoenix.
We actually did. We met at the Truth, Mind, and Reality Conference, and that was just a couple days ago. We didn't say hi. There was a lot of people who were talking to you and buying DVDs, so we did pick up a DVD, and we bought it to donate. Ended up actually streaming the movie, but we saw the documentary, and of course we saw your presentation, and definitely wanted to talk to you. I mean, this is I have not seen a better presentation on chemtrails ever, and I've seen a couple. I've watched, plenty of stuff on YouTube, etc. But you really get it down. I mean, you make it happen.
What about the movie? Did you like the movie?
I like the movie. I love the movie. It's great, and I think it's nice because it actually is something that we could give to people who don't know anything about chemtrails. Like, I knew of them. I mean, I'm aware, but I know way more than I ever did beforehand after watching your presentation. And I would say your presentation was even better by far than the movie.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I think I can agree with you. Well, it's 30 minutes, right? So you got to think about that. The film's the director's cut. It's just I kind of pushed it out a little early because I felt like I was running out of time, and really I was running out of money. So there's going to be a shorter cut that's only an hour that I'll be plugging into film festivals and all this. It needs to be like significantly different to even plug into film festivals because it has to be new to the public. Like, it can't be the version that's online. So I've got another vision, and then I've got a sequel that I'm filming that's even more important than all of it, that's going to knock it out of the park with in regards to frequency and synthetic biology and artificial intelligence and the 5G rollout and how it all relates to geoengineering. It's pretty dark and crazy. But yeah, the presentation, I definitely think it's the best thing I've ever done in my life. I'm really stoked that I was kind of forced into getting only 30 minutes. I'd never spoken at someone else's event as well. It's always been stuff that I've hosted. So it's like I'm up and down on the screen and on the stage. And it's just like there's no pressure. Right. And so this time a friend of a friend got me in the door and Ivan said I could have a table. And then he said I could have 5 minutes. And then on Tuesday or Wednesday, he said I could have 30 minutes. So I had like 3-4 days to like figure out what I was going to exactly say and stuff. And all this information is rolling out like every single day. So I really wanted to make it more pertinent, and I totally analyzed the shit out of the presentation, pardon me, afterwards. And I know exactly what I need to do better and where I can refine it a little bit more to make it more pressing. I think what people need to, and then we can get going on the show. What I think people need to really sink their teeth into is that it's happening in Tucson this year. I've got this street team together in Tucson promoting for the event, and what we've done is print out articles that detail the event, the official launch in Tucson, and then we like highlight the word Tucson, and it's like bold, huge in Tucson, and the article's like zoomed in, and it says Experiment Tucson 2018. You know, people need like that. They need Experiment Tucson 2018 like repeated, flashed in their heads before they can like really be like, wait, they're going to do an experiment in Tucson in 2018, you know? But yeah, it's good. It's good to be able to convey the message with PowerPoint for sure.
And I like that presentation, the idea of saying, 2018, Tucson 2018, because it personalizes it, well, especially if you live here in Arizona, but it doesn't matter. If you live on this planet, it starts to personalize it when you're actually drilling down and saying, like, here's all this information on chemtrails, and then ground zero is right here, and it's ultimately the planet. Ground zero of ground zero is Tucson. And hey, people, let's get with it. And Arizonans are pretty tough, so I think maybe we'll see a turnout, because presentation and also the way you're promoting the coming up, there's the Global Summit to Stop Geoengineering in Tucson, May 12th this year. And so it really takes a pretty heavy sledgehammer to break through that consensus reality. Confirmation bias that everything is just fine, nothing's wrong. You need a big hammer to break through that. And if it's okay, this is all gonna be the interview. We started recording, so we'll just go with everything.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, you want to get out of interview mode, because interviews always sound like interviews. This is like, we're just talking chemtrails here.
No, and you're right. And I think the easiest way to break out of the cognitive dissonance is exactly that, is showing the people that it's happening, and it's happening in the city that they live in. I think one thing that kind of unfolded for me was bringing up people's air quality impacts. Like that there will be an impact to your air quality. And and you just kind of let that sink in. Your air quality, the air that you breathe, is going to be impacted by this experiment. You know, and then just say it and then repeat it, because people need to. That's the thing I've learned about the advertising and the flyers. I'm really stoked about the marketing. I have never done anything like this as far as these global summits that I host, or even anything smaller. I've been able to get print and media exposure. I've been able to pass out flyers, but nothing like what I've done this year. I've even at the Truth Mind Reality and conference in Phoenix, I had stacks of flyers, right, that I was giving out. And then those people, if they're motivated about getting the word out, especially after seeing my presentation and realizing how dire the timeline is, it's more like we're running out of time, and that's what's the most important. So it's time for people that are awake or waking up to get off their asses finally. But, and that being myself included, these stacks of flyers are so empowering. And these people that are out there that are caring, that want to come to the event, they're out there getting a couple more people to come to the event as well. And then those people, they're going to have opportunities to have stacks of flyers. I've mailed out hundreds of stacks of flyers all over the U.S. and Tucson specific and Arizona specific. When I go to the post office and I leave after mailing out a stack of like 30 stacks of flyers, 30 stacks of flyers mailed to different actual activists all over the state, then I feel like I'm doing something, because this is something I've never done before, activating these people to activate more people to get the word out. So when you said that Arizona is a pretty tough crowd and they're actually going to come out, this is something I wanted to touch upon really quick. So I was living in Canada. I was living in Vancouver, British Columbia. I was living outside of Vancouver as well, and moved to the Sunshine Coast, which is like this basically island community. You have to take a ferry to get there. So many people were awake up there, but everybody's so disempowered everywhere. Everywhere there's an attack on empowerment and an attack on inspiration. I've even noticed with the censorship, the posts that come up blank are the ones where I'm trying to inspire and empower people. They don't care about my vaccine posts. They don't care about my fluoride posts. They care about the posts that are looking to inspire and empower people. And the people of Canada, well, what I witnessed, and I don't want to generalize too much, but what I witnessed is there was not much passion up there. It's not going to be that easy to get people to be motivated to try to change anything. But when I learned that David Keith, the primary researcher in this whole chemtrail thing, the geoengineering guy, the guy that's trying to block out the sun, that has the patents, that's getting paid to, on the backside, but to do it, this Harvard professor, when I learned that his launch was going to be going down, the official launch of chemtrails, the official normalizing campaign was being launched in Tucson. When I learned that, I literally was relieved for one day at least. I was relieved to think that we actually stood a chance to stopping this insanity, because Tucson does not play, and neither does Arizona. These are real people, right? And if you get this information into the hands of these, like, there's such a mixed demographic, a mixed bag. But think about, there's indigenous peoples, there's African Americans, there's awakening. I'm a middle class white guy. There's all sorts of different spots where we can light some fires, and it's such an amazing group of inspirable people. They know that the man is messed up, and they know that something like this could actually be occurring. But you bump up against that cognitive dissonance in different regions, maybe more so where I grew up on the East Coast, maybe more so in Canada, maybe more so in middle rural America or what have you. But Arizona does not play, and I really think that that's going to give us the opportunity to really awaken the right people. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I think so for sure. Yeah, because, I'm from the East too. I'm from Wilmington, Delaware originally. And, that is extremely working class. Like, oh, don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. Just work really hard and don't think, and life will work out for you. Arizona has a different mentality for sure. And I would say that Arizona probably is the most liberty-minded free state out there. David Keith, to plan first rollout of chemtrails here, it's amazing how a little bit of grace works. I think he picked the wrong state, because Arizona is one of the few states that still has an armed posse that rides around on horses. And it's not going to go over quite as well here. And something you mentioned about you're mostly censored when it comes to inspiration and empowerment, that makes sense. I think that's probably the worst offense you can be, charged with and censored, is you're inspiring and empowering people. Because even for people who are slightly awake, aware, who are learning some truth, one of the issues that you see even in that crowd, this crowd you could call it, is there's a comfort in defeatism. Maybe you know some truth, but you can say there's no hope. Defeatism is like a warm blanket. Defeatism is like a nice comfort zone or a comfort pit for awake people. And so when you're trying to get over that confirmation bias of the masses who don't know, you also have to get over that sort of defeatism comfort pit that a lot of awake people are in too.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd love to touch upon that. It's also an ego thing. People who are awake and they've been awake for a while, they don't want to hear any new stuff about chemtrails. They've been looking at it for 20 years, God bless them. And the thing is that I have gone through this complete full 180 revolution awakening, in a new awakening for me, being able to be empowered with the power of the flyer. The power of the flyer and being able to go up and sample all these demographics with something has been so eye-opening for me, and it's made me grow exponentially over the past few years since I devoted my life to chemtrails. I really thought that my entire existence would be trying to tell everyone on Earth that geoengineering was ongoing, that it was occurring, and I never ever would have expected so quick into my activism career that I would be thrown a bone. Well, it's a blessing and a curse, and believe me, if we don't stop it, it's a curse. We don't want to lose our sunlight. But the thing is, they're throwing us a bone by normalizing this and trying to launch it publicly, because now I have a new narrative. And with this power of the flyer, I'll tell you a story. I went down to Tucson passing out flyers for the 4th Street or 4th Avenue Festival Street Fair. And I'm always learning. I'm a constant work in progress. Every single day I do something for chemtrails. I have a show almost every day, but even besides that, I'm passing out these flyers to normal people. And the demographic in Arizona is so amazing. I can't get over it. I lived in California. There's so many different people that don't want to hear it, that won't believe it, that you think would believe it, but they've been indoctrinated. They've been completely convinced by their smartphone and the media that there's nothing to see in the skies, and they won't even listen to the fact that they're launching it publicly because they still are being told that it's a conspiracy, and they're not going to listen to me. So I have these flyers, and I'm going person to person. Eventually I stopped going up to someone who's like, wearing a suit or something like that, who I know is just going to throw my flyer away. Even though my flyer is really gentle, and it's very much just telling people. I'll just read it to you right here. It says, "Do you know about solar geoengineering, chemicals to block out the sun? Some call it chemtrails. Without public consent, this is officially being launched in Tucson in 2018 as a cure to global warming." And then it says, "StopGeoengineeringTucson.com." That's my website for the event, and it details this unfolding of events. So it's really gentle, and then it says some call it chemtrails, because I know a lot of people want that cognitive dissonance wall to jump in and say, oh, he said chemtrails. But that's just, a term that some people refer to it as, and we're being very gentle with it. And so, and I'll shorten this story up, I was going to all sorts of different people, and I can literally look a person in the eyes and tell if they're going to respond negatively or not, because people who have awakened to chemtrails, they awaken to a lot of other stuff. Truth is like a frequency, and once you start writing it, all these other things become self-evident, and you actually become an enlightened being kind of thing, and you hold yourself differently, and I can tell, I can see it. And the thing about it is you can go up to anybody with this flyer and you learn something about their reaction. So towards the end of the day, I was like, you know what? Tucson has all these amazing G's. There's these like total like Mexican or African American or indigenous, and these are the people that we need, because they are right there ready to wake up. Okay, the people that are in their comfort zone, like you were mentioning, they're totally defeated already, because it's an old story to them, and they've seen people come and go, and they're not going to try to be inspired by me. But if I approach some super gangster dude, I'm not a big guy, right? But I'm just it's got to be fearless in the pursuit of saving the world, right? So I go up to the most gangster guys I've ever seen, and I'm like, brother, you're going to want to hear about this. You're going to want to know about this. For you and your family, you're going to want to know about this. And I'm passing them out to these people who I think are right there ready to wake up. And those are the kind of people that are actually going to get vocal, get loud, and actually want to be persistent, because they don't stand for stuff like this.
It's oftentimes easier to convince someone who, I'll tell you a weird story. Here's a little story. I'll make it super fast. Cool. When I was young, I was in the military, and I don't endorse such things now, but I was 17. And so when I was young, I was in the military, and I actually went to Somalia, and I was on the beach of Somalia. And this goes along with what you're saying, I think. And so one of my extra duties was washing. We had these big clothes washers, and there was a local guy from Somalia who was helping out. And I'm on the beach, and we just throw all the clothes in this big clothes washers. And I looked, behind me at the smoldering ruins of Somalia, literally. And I said, man, does the world know this is happening? And this guy's name was Nizam Mohammed. And he looked at me and gave me a look I'll never forget. And he says, that's the thing about you white people. You look at stuff like this like it just happened. Like the world just got messed up. And he's like, the world was messed up, I'll tell you something, before George Washington was president, and it just got me. And I think so when you're talking to somebody who knows that things are messed up, there's somebody who's they don't have the same confirmation bias. They'd say, well, you know what? As a matter of fact, the world is messed up, and it didn't just happen.
Yo, Craig, you totally nailed it, and that's awesome that you had that you had that experience right then and there. I love the picture that you painted, and yeah, it's totally real. There's so many people out there that think that the government is out to make them happy with fluffy rainbows, and these new clouds that they're introducing are just because they wanted to update their cloud atlas, and the nanoparticulate aluminum they want to spray in the skies is to block out our sun because global warming is going to come take over. Didn't you see it in the movies?
Oh yeah, and did you see that new minivan that just came out, the 2018 minivan with those neat doors that open so easily, and it's got a It's got built-in like spaces for your iPads, and oh my gosh, can't you just give up with us, please? Stop worrying about all these issues. Everything's fine. No, I hear you. One thing I definitely wanted to touch on was there are people who are listening to this, of course, who don't know who you are. So, who are you? What is your mission? How'd you get there? And what led up to that day, that presentation that we saw at the Truth Mind Reality Conference? And one thing I'd be great if you could touch on that I think is awesome. It really spoke to us at the conference, is your realization of chemtrails started while you were standing in a potato field.
Oh, yes, of course. So and it's so funny you talk about the Truth Mind Reality Conference. To me, that's like month ago, and I'm looking at the calendar. It's just been a few days. Wow, I'm so glad to have that in the past, and I can't wait to get the viral from Ivan, the producer of the show, of the conference, and get that out there. It's definitely going to go viral and wake some people up. So yeah, my name is Matt Landman. And a lot of people, nobody knows me, right? Especially with censorship and all that stuff. But I do have 26,000 followers on Facebook, so the word is getting out, even though the Facebook censorship has put the kibosh on me getting around as of late, especially after my film came out, Frankenskies. But I grew up in Virginia, right down. We'd go up to Delaware to go to Ocean City and hop over for the tax-free. So I know about Delaware. You grew up over there. But it wasn't for me ultimately. And after getting my bachelor's of science and marketing management from Virginia Tech, I moved to Southern California first. I thought I was going to pop into LA. I thought LA was going to be like New York, right? Where I wasn't going to need a car and I was just going to get on the subway and do things and stuff. I had no idea. And I ended up in San Diego. And then finally, after some back and forth to DC and San Diego and working all these different jobs, I was a mortgage broker. I worked in real estate. I was vice president of Xterra Wetsuits, this triathlon wetsuit company. I was in restaurant industries all over California. And then I finally ended up getting my master's degree. I moved to Northern California, went to California State University of Humboldt, got my master's in business administration with a focus in strategic sustainability. And I did double time then and did a film program at the same time because I really wanted to get into film. And I couldn't even go to film school in Virginia because there wasn't one. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go to California. And then finally I got out and I got behind a desk again. And I was a finance analyst at a silver and gold jewelry company. And then I finally was like, I can't do this. And I worked at a nonprofit, Internews, which is this global nonprofit. But then they were actually pretty corrupted too. And they were also involved with the CIA and all this stuff. And I had to get grounded and do something. I was literally in rural Northern California amongst these beautiful redwood trees and stuff. And I got grounded. I went and worked on a squash and potato and corn farm. He had an orchard as well, and we grew a lot of different stuff, kale and onions and beets, you name it, really. But primarily, we grew a dozen varieties of potatoes and a dozen varieties of winter squash. And I did not realize until about a week into working there that potatoes grow potatoes. And this, like, some people laugh and some people are like, oh, my God, you're serious. They do, don't they? But I went through this process of indoctrination. I grew up right outside of Washington, D.C. We didn't have a farm. I never really even visited a farm. We didn't grow potatoes. And when those things underneath my sink, those potatoes started growing eyes, we cut off the eyes or we threw it away. Like, I didn't realize that thing was a seed. And I realized how indoctrinated I was and how disconnected I was and how disconnected almost everybody is to nature and things that matter and the way the world works. And I really got to tune in and connect with 2,000-year-old trees. Like, think about that. 2,000-year-old trees in Northern California. And while there, we were in the midst of a catastrophic drought. Okay. And I never cared about weather manipulation or anything like that. I knew about 9/11 thanks to Dylan Avery, who I was actually friends with after he made the film in Southern California. What's it called? Loose Change. Loose Change woke me up to 9/11, the documentary. But 9/11 is not too hard if you really dig in. But aside from that, I didn't know about anything. I didn't know vaccines were bad. Now I do. I didn't know fluoride was bad. Now I do. I didn't know GMOs are bad. Now I do, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm on this farm And Farmer Paul and the weatherman and the trees and the ecosystem, and usually we get this seasonal deluge. Like we get 4 to 5 months of rain every fall, starting in late October, early November. And the 3,000, 2,000-year-old trees, they're used to this standardized ecosystem. This is every single year. The entire Pacific Northwest, from San Francisco to Seattle and beyond, it always gets this seasonal rain where it's basically raining for 4 straight months at least. Well, we hadn't had it for 5 years. And I didn't know about weather manipulation. Like I said, I didn't know about creating high pressure bubbles to steer jet streams, or I didn't know that spraying aluminum dissipates rain and spraying silver dust makes it rain, or anything like that. But I did have a background in stocks and statistics, and I graduated top of my class with an MBA in strategic sustainability, and I was working on a farm. And one week we were supposed to get 100% chance of rain. And the frogs and salamanders from underneath my building that I lived in, the apartment that I lived in, it was an old Victorian home, and they built everything in that whole town above ground because of so much moisture. Because when it rains for 4 months straight in this like Pacific Northwest like rainforest, it gets moldy, and they just built the houses above ground. But then an ecosystem developed underneath, and it's these amphibious creatures. So these frogs and salamanders are literally outside. I'd never seen them before. They're waiting for this huge storm because they can feel it coming. There's this energy in the air when a giant storm is coming, and it hasn't rained for 5 years when it's usually raining every year. So I got my rain boots on, and I checked the weather, and lo and behold, 100% chance of rain for the next week. Farmer Paul comes out and he says, yeah, the Doppler radar says storm's coming. Good thing you guys are wearing your rain boots and raincoat and all this stuff. And these big dark storm clouds come rolling off the ocean. And I'm working in gorgeous rural California. I can hear the waves crashing. It's like half a mile away. And that's where the potato farm was. And it's very sparse air traffic. I'll see a jet or 2 or 3 in a day. High in the sky, nothing coming out of the back of the plane. But on this particular day, over a dozen planes, jets showed up on the edge of the storm only. And they just started crisscrossing the sky and leaving persistent linear cirrus clouds out of the back of these jets. And still, I didn't think anything of it, but the grid pattern, it persisted. The milky clouds turned into a haze, and the storm passed. It didn't drop any rain. And I'm out there every day working, and I'm like, okay, I guess I won't wear my freaking rain boots, right? And so it took a few days, but the storm passed and the plane sprayed the whole time, and I did not wake up. This is what's going on in the world. So then finally, and this is like my longer thing, this is like, I can't tell this all in the 30-minute presentation that I crammed 97 slides into the other day. So then a couple months later, we're in the midst of this drought still. And, some farmers that aren't doing different practices are losing their livelihood, especially in Central California. And there's like this consolidation of farmers where the big ag is buying up these small farms. And I'm like, what gives, right? And my friend over the phone back east, I'm talking to him about the state of the world and how nobody even knows about 9/11. And he's like, yeah, well, no one was there on 9/11. If you go online, there's both counts of the story, and they're saying it's up and down and left and right. And who are you to know, especially if you're like a kid? Because I was like getting my MBA and I was surrounded by a bunch of people getting their bachelors, right? So those people, none of them are awake to 9/11, these kids. And I was wondering why. And he goes, but I mean, chemtrails, how can you not see that, he says. And I'm like, see what? And he's like, chemtrails. And I go, what's that? And he's like, oh, come on, you're the one that showed me about 9/11, Matt. You should look it up. So I looked it up on the internet, and my whole life just starts to change. I'm like, whoa, there's movies about this that suck. That seems like everybody involved might happen to be CIA. It took me years to learn that it was all totally corrupted by controlled opposition. And as it unfolded, I realized that nobody knew about it. I mean, fluoride and vaccines and stuff, there's groups and there's people vocal and stuff, but nobody knew about it because the dialogue's being so well controlled. The narrative is being so well controlled. And right when they launched right when they launched geoengineering and chemtrails in our sky, they got CIA agents, smeared human shit all over them, put them in the inner cities, and had them run around screaming, chemtrails, they're spraying us, chemtrails, they're spraying us, right? It's so smart. And then they get the media to go, oh, this crazy person thinks chemtrails are spraying us. And they literally tell us that it's going on, but control our mind struct because we're so easily programmed. So lo and behold, I witnessed that a little bit. I was kind of racking my brain. I saw little segments here and there, but I'm not really that much of a TV guy anymore, so nothing really stuck. And I'm like thinking and observing, and almost everybody is completely mind controlled on the topic. So when I'm passing out flyers and if I say the word chemtrails, they chuckle. They all chuckle, and I want to be like, what's so funny? You know what I'm saying? But I'm like, oh yeah, I know it's funny, but also you look up the word geoengineering or solar radiation management or stratospheric aerosol injections or the tropospheric aerosol program released by the Department of Energy in 2001 or the charged aerosol release experiment through NASA. I mean, it goes on, and it's like, whoa, wait a second, they were just controlling the dialogue, controlling the verbiage, and controlling our complete mind structs on a topic that's actually the most important topic out there.
Checking out some of the stuff that you've done on YouTube, I saw something called hashtag hijacked that you created, and that seemed like it was a work in progress. And this was different than Frankenskies. It seems like it was centered on getting some truth out there and helping people realize and break through cognizant dissidence. Is that something that you're still developing? Is that a work in progress? Are we going to see more of that?
Craig, I've done 40 shows. 40 radio shows and podcasts since I came out with the film Frankenskies. Okay. Even though Frankenskies could be a little shorter, it's the best one of its kind, like hands down. And I've been on shows with even a couple million listeners. And the best radio show host so far is Greg Carlwood. He's just amazing. He's so well researched and he really digs in. And then and you, man, because you know why? Because you actually did a little bit of you did some research, and you're actually asking really amazing questions. And yeah, thank you for looking at that hijacked video. I really appreciate it. And no, seriously, because just a little bit, it goes a long way. And that project is one of the most important things. I can't stress it enough. But the thing with my life is it's such a I'm always trying to figure out what's best for the saving the world, awakening humanity, whatever it may be. And right now I'm the chemtrail guy. So it was really a challenge for me. I made that presentation. I've been working on it for a few months now. And the presentation is a work in progress, but I kind of tabled it because I was kind of concerned. There's a lot of things that I don't talk about that I know are truth, that because I don't want to scare anybody away, and I don't want to be known as a David Icke type character or anybody who's like bouncing around in ideas, because the chemtrail movement, it really, really needs me. And I don't mean to be like that or anything like that, but I do pride myself in helping this whole thing kind of get up to speed, and I can identify with so many different types of people. Like I can identify with a 21-year-old kid of any ethnic group, but I can also identify with like an 80-year-old person of any ethnic group, because like I come from DC, right? And I've got lots of friends. Everything works out all right like that. But ultimately the hijack thing, I had to watch my words to get it all out. But I think it's really, really, really important. I cannot stress it enough, because I'm going to do it formally. I actually envisioned, like, if I really gave it my time and energy, I'd be giving that presentation at the Truth Mind Reality. You know, I had the thought, should I give that presentation at the Truth Mind Reality? But I can't, because I'm the chemtrail guy right now, and I really need to make sure that message is delivered, and delivered properly, and delivered immediately, because time is but of the essence. They're launching their normalization program this year in Tucson, Arizona, and if we don't protest it, then history will go down. Our timeline will say that there was no opposition, and our silence was consent. Somehow we've got this contracts going on where our silence is consent to this nonsense, and which isn't fair. But I didn't make up the rules. So the presentation hijack, it really digs into that cognitive dissonance, to our mental slavery as spiritual beings. But I'm not really sure how far I want to take it. And yes, it's a documentary in the works as well. It's like the framework for an awakening documentary that I want to make short but really impactful. And I think the world needs it, especially for this next generation, because there is an attack on discernment. Discernment is completely being infiltrated and I'm trying to think of words that aren't curse words. It's under attack. Okay, the children, especially their discernment, it's under attack because the propaganda machine wants to make sure that we don't know how to think. And if we don't know how to think, then we have to rely on them, on the authority for the truth. But if we can resonate and learn how to know just from the truth within and seeing things through the right lens, we can take truth as the authority and not authority as the truth. So it's kind of this evolution that's being hijacked, and it's not just the outcome of certain aspects of our world. It's the outcome of humanity altogether. Okay, if you see the April edition, the front page of the National Geographic, which is another hijacked media outlet. Okay, they used to be trusted; they no longer can be. And the front page of the April edition, I encourage people to look it up. It is the progression of humanity's evolution, and it shows apes, and it shows humans, and it shows cyborgs. It says that we need to take destiny into our own hands and become robots, because there's this weird push for this AI agenda out there recently through the media and through these different narratives that are controlled. And that's why once you wake up and you see through the right lens, you can see what their agenda is by realizing what they're trying to push everybody into. And right now they're trying to push everybody into transhumanism, because people like Elon Musk, sorry, he's not to be trusted. Sorry for anybody who likes him. I used to really like him. People like Elon Musk and other globalist agenda pushers, they're saying that artificial intelligence is getting so advanced so fast that we have to become cyborgs to take our destiny into our own hands so that AI doesn't take over and become smarter than us. But it's all just this weird problem reaction solution again and again and again and again, which is a Hegelian dialectic. George Hegel, philosopher, realized it and created the term master-slave dialectic, where we don't even realize that we're being slaves to these masters who are creating the dialogue to force us into this scenario where they create the problem and they have the solution ready for us, and we think we're making up our own minds, but we're not. We're being completely controlled. The geoengineering scenario is doing exactly that. But it all falls into the same category of being controlled and being slaves, literally mental slaves, to a system that doesn't resonate with us, that is controlled by a very small group that we do not consent to. And we need to first realize what we're not consenting to before we can stand up for ourselves.
Discernment is, if there really is like one thing that is being gone after right now, I think it's discernment. And I know I've noticed in the last year or so, people's ability to discern, I'll just call them the normals, the masses, has gone to a lower level than I've ever seen it. So there's definitely a lot at play on many levels to destroy discernment. And, also, a belief in AI, I think, like I was a developer, computer programmer for quite a while. The term always makes me sort of shake my head because there is really no such thing as AI. What I mean is there is no artificial intelligence as an artificial consciousness. Like a computer chip doesn't know what water is, nor that it's wet, and it can't have a conversation with you. It can just, send the words, speech to text to against database, looking at many, many routines. How do I respond to these words? Here, I can do that back from text to speech, So the thing about AI that's very haunting to me is, oh yes, it exists. I mean, AI is happening, but behind it, there is no actual intelligence. So it's almost like we're making this God that has no actual consciousness nor intelligence. If we have a robotic God with no consciousness, then God creates man in its own image, you might say. And then humans just become their programming. It's almost, there's so much oddness to AI. It's very haunting to me. But like you say, truth is a frequency. And I think ultimately that frequency really is your own personal signal. And when you tune into that, you wake up. And all of a sudden, the world is different. And, if you take a picture of yourself one day and you focus on the truth and take a picture of yourself the next, you look different. You bend and change space and time. So I think the best way to combat, AI is to simply be self-aware, tune into the truth frequency, tune into your own signal and come from that place. And the next thing you know, you'll be lecturing at the Truth, Mind, and Reality conference.
Exactly. And I think that it's a dehumanization. I want to start a Human for Life campaign. And I know it sounds so simple, but there's this thing with the current world that we live in, and it goes back to the comfort zone that we brought up, and the minivans, and the newest version of everything, and the iPhone, and the I this, and the I that, and everything's really egocentric. It gets us into this place where we don't think that we're good enough. It's a really weird mental construct, and it's been constructed. These people behind the scenes that got all this going, Edward Bernays and what have you, they know how to make us feel humiliated without us even realize that we feel this way. So we feel like less powerful beings than we actually are. Whereas we're co-creators, we can manifest things, and we are just so, like you said, we're so flexible in our shape and form. You wake up every morning and you say, I'm old, I'm getting old, I'm so ugly. You're gonna shape into that because your words are so powerful. And that's one thing that the presentation, the hashtag hijacked, it really does touch upon so many things that if you're not familiar with any of it, it can be a fierce awakening experience. But that's what we need to embrace our humanity, to see that we are not improving ourselves by putting robotic parts in ourselves. We're actually taking away from our energetic field. The dehumanization isn't going to make you any better. It's going to make you soulless. It's going to take away your connection to source. But all of these things, such as, spirituality and what have you, they're being attacked as not cool for the kids, the next generation. And it seems to me that as much as we wake up our generation, nothing's really going to matter as time goes on. We have to really focus on the next one, because we're only as good as what we leave behind. Oh, I've got this speech, Craig, and I'm so glad that you were there in Phoenix, and I want to just give you a little taste of it because I haven't perfected it all, but I'd like to
do it. Yeah, for sure.
So, and it's unfortunate that the monarch butterfly has been used as a symbol for MK Ultra, because the monarch butterfly is actually something really amazing. And when I was really connecting with nature, when I was working on the farm, and I was learning about the life cycle of things and how we play out in it all, and how the connection to nature is really part of us. And there's this energy, and everything is just frequency. You can attract whatever you want, whether it be good or bad, and everything in your life is a lesson, just showing you how powerful you are. Whether or not you're willing to look at it, whether or not you're willing to accept it is up to you. So the next generation thing, I've always been wondering how, because it also, sometimes I even envision the powers that be knowing the tricks and not being convinced at birth that they're only going to live to be 80, and that maybe some of these freaking people behind the scenes, that they live like longer than one generation or something like that, because it seems like that they don't care how long it takes, as long as it's a slow kill on our everything, then it's all good. And if it's one generation at a time, then they think that they can get away with it. So first they got the moms out of the house, and then they replaced the moms with the television and a patented mind control device. And then they replaced the television with these internet devices that are eventually going to be 5G and pulsing their own crazy microwave frequency that totally disrupts your overall frequencies and all this stuff. And I'm like, how can we get to the next generation, inspire? Because it ultimately comes down to the teachers bringing it to the next generation. Like, I can totally relate to somebody. I've got I live with a 6 and a 9-year-old, and I'm totally relating to them on these amazing levels, telling them the truths about the world. And so they can pass that down and we can carry it forward. But how can I inspire other people to be like me? I'm just kidding. How can I inspire other people to get it out there and to really be inspired to share the truth and to not take truth as somebody trying to teach them a lesson or something? Because all of a sudden the ego gets involved when you bring up vaccines and all these things. It's like, I'm just the message, the deliverer. Okay, that's all it is. And the monarch butterfly, it embraces this generational thing. So, and yeah, I was learning about the life cycle of the salmon as well. The whole thing with the salmon and how they come back, leave the salmon really quick. They go from the top of a mountain when they're born. They go all the way downstream. They're freshwater fish. Then they become saltwater fish. They transmute into a saltwater fish, go out to sea, and live out in the ocean for a couple years and get pregnant. And then they go all the way back upstream to where they were born and lay their eggs and die. And then the redwood trees and the raccoons and the bear and what have you, they come and eat the dead fish. And that's like this big life cycle that everybody lives off of. It's wild. And that kind of started making me think about how delicate everything is and how important we are and everything, just to as the protectors of this space. So the monarch butterfly, it starts off waking up in the Yucatan in Mexico. She wakes up and there's this blooming milkweed. Okay. It wakes up and it eats the milkweed and it flies its entire lifespan, and it makes it into basically, like, let's say, southern United States. And that's a big journey for the monarch butterfly. And then there the milk thistle is going to be blooming, so it dies, and it has this cocoon, whatever, with the babies, and the babies are born, and they wake up to more milkweed. They eat the milkweed, and they fly. They fly over mountains and highways and all this stuff, everything. These butterflies, they fly, and then they make it up into like Colorado area. Okay, but we're talking about this entire species of butterflies. And then finally they do it again. They wake up, there's milk, it's spring there finally. They wake up to milkweed and they eat it. And obviously I need to perfect this speech. Then they go all the way to Canada. So it takes about 3 generations of butterflies to go from Mexico to Canada. When they get to Canada, they have their spawn and they wake up and they have to go all the way from Canada to Mexico, or the generation will be lost. They have to do what 3 generations took in 1 generation, or the species will be completely lost. So this cycle goes on and on and on. If one of those legs of the journey gets ruined, okay, if one version of the species wakes up in Mexico and can't make it to the milkweed blooming on the Mexican border, then the entire species will be lost, okay? If one species wakes up in Canada and doesn't have the energy to go all the way to the Yucatan, because it's fighting a whole season, right? It's got to get there for the first bloom, or the entire species of beautiful butterflies will be completely extinct. This is what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with, we have to set the stage for the next generation, or the next generation will be lost. We're going to lose everything if we don't act. And that's the dire straits that geoengineering has put us in, because unfortunately, the treason that we've seen in our skies over the past 2 decades, this has only been field research. This has only been research to see if they can do full-scale deployment everywhere, mimic a volcano, and block out our sun. They claim that they're going to try to do it for only a few years. They claim that afterwards maybe it'll slow down global warming, but probably more like a decade, they say. Okay, but how can we trust them? After a decade, if they say it's not working, they're going to spray more and we won't have blue skies for that decade and on. That's a generation lost. What are they going to be sprayed with? Nanoparticulate smart bots? That's the agenda that I see unfolding. And with the frequency 5G rollout and the spraying of all this, and then all of this weird stuff that's coming up in the chemtrails, such as synthetic biology and stuff, if we go and put our trust into the hands of a very select few who have been committing treason over the past couple decades on us, what are we saying for the next generation? That we just give up on them? We're just handing them over? So that's that story. That's the monarch and the monarch butterfly thing.
I love it. That's really good. It's hard. I love your hijacked project that you're working on and what you were just saying. And it's hard because you are the chemtrail guy, and it's important. And it's probably the most important work, because if, well, we all die, what's the point of the hijacked project, right? So it's good that your efforts are going towards chemtrails right now. Having diverse topics you want to speak on, like, I think hijacked is important. And I know here on this show, we've had the issue of where hijacked resonates with me, and I can be pretty out there to most people. And I used to just do kind of rambling talks about stuff. And we decided, let's not do that for a while because, well, people just thought it was too weird. we had to stay on point. You know, I can't be out rambling in the desert. Along with what you were saying with the butterflies and your experience on the farm resonates with me, is actually when I lived in Colorado, I was an organic farmer for a while, helped on a farm, part of a farm. And one of the things that I realized out there on the organic farm was even organic farming, which sounds better. Oh, and it is better than, chemical farming. Much less damage, but still monocrops are monocrops, and they're not good for the environment, even if they're organic. It's amazing what comes to us when we're out there in the field, in a farm. I wish everybody spent some time on an organic farm, because it's a place that it affects the mind in a powerful way. And I got into Arthur Haynes. We did an interview with him a few months ago, and he has the concept of rewilding, the idea of we can improve ourselves, but it's really about improving the next generation. One of the concepts of rewilding is that we are like Homo domesticus fragilis. We're this domesticated human that's very fragile. Like, all dogs pretty much came from wolves or coyotes. There weren't many different dogs back in the day. So we could say, if you used to be a wolf, and you look at yourself now and you look in the mirror and you go, yeah, I'm a wolf. It's like, no, man, reality is you are a basset hound. You're not that wild human anymore. And you have to start thinking to yourself, well, with this domestication, what have I lost? One of those things is definitely discernment, like we're speaking of, a healthy body. And really, we're not putting that future because of a lack of discernment, we're not putting our future generations first. We're not thinking about it. If we connect to that true signal, truth is a signal, like you were saying, truth is a frequency. If we connect to that and work on ourselves and stop geoengineering, and we also do the self-work like you speak of in Hijacked, then in this lifetime, rather than be a basset hound, you won't quite be a wolf again. That's not going to happen. But you can at least make it to a German Shepherd. And you can be a badass German Shepherd. And then your kids can almost be wolves, but then their kids can be wolves, on every level: intellectual, spiritual, physical, intuitive, instinctual. We're not going to become these like primal beings again, but I feel like we're in this time of human evolution where we either become AI blobs, or we become this neo-aboriginal badass that really lives the best of the hunter-gatherer life and a civilized life where you have a smartphone.
Wow, I love it. As we talk about getting out there and getting back to it, I was reminded of how, I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but supposedly when domesticated pigs, if they get loose and get in the wild and start to fend for themselves, that they have a recessive gene of a wild gene that can be activated during their lifetime, where they actually will grow hair and tusks and become like this more wild boar, not the bald looking pig that we see behind the fences. So that was funny. I thought I'd mention it. And then also with the frequency and getting us back to nature and getting tuned in, I really think that if you want to learn about it, to learn about grounding and to really see that our connection to the earth is just so much, and we're really sensitive frequency beings. I've noticed that with me especially, I can get caught in a rut of all these different what have yous, and then all I need to do is put my feet in the ground for a minute in the grass, and I can get past it. And then speaking to the monocrops, it's really something else when you look at the charts and see what kind of seed varieties we had just a generation ago. One thing that I don't resonate with is, like you said, that we're not as we become robots, we're not even thinking about the children and the next generation anymore. But that is in our DNA. Our ancestors, that's all they cared about was their next of kin. That's all they worked towards. And I mean, we're talking about generations of ingrained in our DNA. We should have that still, and we can get back there. But the way we're going with the monocrops, I can't even. It's unfathomable. I recommend taking a look at the documentary and the book also, Botany of Desire. Botany of Desire talks about how humans affected the evolution of certain plants. It gets into tulips, potatoes, apples, and marijuana. And the most fascinating thing, one of the most fascinating things for me, was how the Incans took the potatoes and they said, this is a very abundant thing in nature, these potatoes, but they're poisonous. They were poisonous. And over generations, through selective breeding, they bred the poison out of the potatoes. And then we have all these different varieties of potatoes. And it was all because of these generation after generation of people that were in tune with nature, that they cared enough to eat poison for us, and now we have potatoes. So when you get your French fries and stuff, think about that. We should be preserving these things and helping these plants evolve, and not be steering them into a dystopian reality where we end up with three different apples. There's thousands of different things out there. And that's another thing I learned the hard way on the farm. I had no idea. We were growing dozens of varieties of these ornamental squash and dozens of varieties of winter squash. I never knew any of these things existed, let alone hundreds of them on the planet.
Oh, definitely. We used to eat, I think our hunter-gatherer ancestors used to eat an average of like 1,500 different things a year as far as different herbs, plants, animals. And now the average human, if you think about it, they only eat about 6 to 12 different things. And all of that is domesticated animals oftentimes, and it's domesticated crops. So, domesticated food, domesticated body, domesticated mind. It's kind of how it goes. Yeah, I like what you talk about with the wild pigs. Like right now, we're Wilbur from Charlotte's Web. We're this neat little piggy that can see the signs in the webs. If anyone's read that book, and we could just kind of hop out of that barn, and we could be a wild boar in no time. And that's the life I personally would like to live. And so I know we've gone almost to an hour. If you have a few more minutes, I'd love to just cover one more topic. The question really is, and this is something that really I think maybe you can speak to. I think we've been talking about it this whole time, but I'll ask it somewhat specifically just to make sure that we cover it. And that is, how does knowledge of truth break the dam of consensus reality and confirmation bias and change minds and therefore reality? Knowing truth isn't enough. How does that knowledge change anything? How do we change reality with it? So the question is, how does knowledge of truth break the dam of consensus reality and confirmation bias and change minds and therefore reality? So how do we do that for ourselves, and how do we do that in the world? Because like with chemtrails, for instance, we need to shatter the normalcy.
Thanks, and that's a great question to end it on. And again, I really appreciate you giving the question some thought. And at first, I was like, oh, what's the answer? And then immediately I knew the answer. It's so obvious. The answer to the question is exactly how my personal journey unfolded, which it gets really interesting, and I won't share the entire thing because I've never shared it pretty much with anybody. But what the story is by realizing that there's dark, you can realize that there's light. It's easy to think that you know that there's light because you're like, oh, I'm light, I'm happy, everything's great, the world's great, but the world's not. That's the thing. And the thing about waking up is, like I said in the presentation in Phoenix, waking up is a total kick in the face, and it is depressing at times, and we're sensitive beings. But nobody cares about your feelings. We just want you to wake up. Okay. And waking up is a lot easier to see the dark because we know we're not that. And if we're not dark, what are we? Are we gray? Are we pink? I think we're light, right? We're beings of light. And once you start to really see that, then the dark becomes repulsive. And it literally makes you sick to your stomach. And then at that juncture, you're left with one choice: to be the light that shines on the dark, to create that duality in the world of duality that we live in. We live in that world of duality, which gives us this opportunity to shed karma and to come here and incarnate in material bodies and to do all these things, right? But we get to also make choice with free will, light or dark, light or dark, light or dark. And ultimately it comes down to resonating with our own spirit and realizing who we really are and where we came from and why we're here and what we're here to do. And once we get there, activism, lo and behold, becomes very rewarding. So that's my answer to that one.
I think that's absolutely perfect and great way to wrap it up. Well, hopefully we'll talk to you again sometime because we got to like a few of the many questions. So let's see how that unfolds. And I guess I'll just wrap it up with, how can people get a hold of you? Where should they look to find your stuff? Of course, I'll have it all in the show notes.
Yeah, and thanks. And you've been great. I would love to do more chatting with you. That would be great. I have my Facebook where I post regularly. It's Matt Landman. I look forward to connecting with any like-minded or answer any questions that you may have. And I also have frankenskies@gmail.com if you want to shoot me off any questions or contact me. I keep up to speed with that. Franken, Franken skies. Also, my baby is actualactivists.com. That's my website. I do a daily truth on there every single day. I haven't done one yet today, but I will soon. I put a truth, something that helps bring light to the dark and what have you, just to wake people up and all that jazz. And then on Actual Activists, it's broken down into fluoride, chemtrails, GMO, vaccines, and health. And ultimately, like, we could do a whole show on health where we can learn how to empower ourselves through mineralization and activation of everything through alkalinizing and detoxing and juicing and chelating and all this other stuff. So it's really about empowering and inspiring yourselves and not focusing on that dark, right? And then also, please check out my film, frankenskiesthemovie.com. Frankenskies the Movie is just the first step in waking people up. It goes through the chronological timeline of the whole geoengineering project. And then also, please learn about the event. I don't care where you are. Please learn about the event. It's very important for the entire outcome of humanity. It's located at stopgeoengineeringtucson.com. And aside from that, please, Matt Landman on YouTube. Landman. So yeah, thanks so much. And it's really been a pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's been great.
You are listening to Radiant Creators, a collaborative project composed of people whose passion, purpose, and dedication requires forging their own unique path of empowerment and livelihood. A radiant creator isn't making a living, They are living.